Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Dharma Talk portion of our Sunday Dharma program. Thank you, everyone, for joining us both online and here in person. Giving the introductory talk today is going to be Wonil Sunim. Wonil Sunim has been involved with American Zen since the late 80s. A resident of Providence Zen Center for several years, he's also trained at Dharma Zen Center in Los Angeles and Tong Do Sa in the Mojave Desert before moving to Korea to become a monk. He recently completed ordination at Bhikku Sa and is now a Bhikku in the Choge order and the head Dharma teacher here at the Providence Zen Center. Answering questions this morning is going to be our very own Kwan Haeng Sunim JDPS. Kwan Haeng Sunim met Zen Master Seung Sahn at the Cambridge Zen Center back in 1986. He ordained as a novice monk in 1998 at Chik Chi Sa, South Korea, and in 2003 he received Bhikku precepts at Tong Do Sa, South Korea. He has lived and practiced mainly at Hwage Son Musang Son, Korea, where he performed the jobs of Housemaster, Media Director, and Head Monk. Kwan Haeng Sunim received Inka in December 2020 and is currently the co-guiding teacher and practices here at the Providence Zen Center in Rhode Island. So thank you both for your talks. And Wonil Sunim is now going to come from behind the camera where he's doing the media to magically appear on the cushion to give the talk. So stay tuned.
So I guess I just got out of Kyoche a week ago, and the way we do here, we have a Sangha gathering right when we get out. I don't know why we do that. So I'm still adjusting. I'm with another person from the Kyoche back there, Jesse, who did the whole thing, and man, it was very intense. Oh, Kyoche, it's a 3-month intensive retreat. So you do basically 4:30 till 9:30 at night, 4:30 in the morning, all day meditation. Lisa was there too.
Only 1 week.
1 week.
3 months.
And you have to do,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was the cook and also the head Dharma teacher. So it was so intense because there's no way to rest. So you're just in that, that high energy state all the time. And now my brain is just, whoa. So, but it was beautiful. I don't mean to say anything about it. It was really wonderful. And I love to be the staff. I find in my older age, it's just wonderful to be part of this family here at Providence Zen Center and to serve and take care of people. That's a good way to do a retreat. That's a secret. If you live here and you can do jobs and help cook lunch or something, and it's very satisfying, and it gives a human feel to it, and you're not in that very intense place all the time. You have a room, you're comfortable. That's what I remember about it in New York. When I first moved to New York, I lived there for a while. That place made me sick the first time I was there. It's so high energy and just an alien environment. But when you live there, once you're comfortable, then it's the best place in the world. It's really wonderful. So please move into the Zen Center and join our retreats. So I always like to talk about things that come up during that process. But this time, it was pretty much just gung-ho work and taking care of people. And it was more just absorbing things from other people. And one of the teachers I really like is Diane Eagles from Cambridge. She's a new JDPS, but she's from the first generation. She spent a lot of time with Seung Sahn Sunim. She was here when they first bought this Zen Center 45 years ago. And helped in the early days here. So she has a lot of her own wisdom. And she wanted to read the temple rules, which we usually do at the beginning of the retreat, because it's sort of it covers a lot. It's really a profound document. It's in the chanting book if you ever want to look at it. And there was one line in it that really caught my attention. And her too, she was reading it too. When we got through with it, she was talking about this one line. So I want to talk about this a little bit. The line is, if you break through the wall of self, you will become infinite in time and space. to me, that's really what we're doing here. Or that's one aspect of it. There's another. We always say first get enlightenment, then help all beings. So that part's always included. But this breaking through the wall of self is really where a lot of our lives are focused, trying to overcome that, the self. That's what I see when people come to retreat. The first thing I notice is they're awkward. This is a different environment. How do you adapt to it? And over the course of a few days, they slowly, put down the self, the idea, this is my territory, and sort of join in this harmonious group. And the true self emerges, It's more like that to me than breaking through the wall. I like the way Seung Sahn put it. He wrote a poem about this, kind of the same point. The end of the poem, white clouds floating in the sky, clear water flowing down the mountain, the wind through the pagoda, I surrender my whole life to them. To me, that is breaking through the wall of self. Or that's the example of someone who has. They're in this harmonious, peaceful state. Very easy. Like surrendering the self, though, is not easy. That's where a lot of us fail, or that's the wall that we find. This self, this I, my, me. It's very strong, very strong. Taoist says, and this is to him, this is the barrier of enlightenment. He says, if you haven't got enlightenment, just continue practice. Eventually you'll give your consent to abandon the self. Then it's right there. Like that's the wall. And it's precious to us. We hold on to it so tight. So how do you get beyond that? So I wanted to talk about some of my own experience with that. It happened to me a few times in my life where I kind of surrendered in a natural way. When I was a child, I grew up in Louisiana, very rural area, and not really any people around. And I remember when I was pretty young that that was difficult for me, not for my siblings, but for me. I wanted to be around people all the time, and just to be in the wilderness by myself, which I found was how I spent all my summers and all the free time. I was just out in the woods. That it was very hard for me to just do that. And in Louisiana, you can't really go out to the forest that much because of it's the subtropics. There's insects and snakes and all kinds of terrible things. So really, it was the fields. There's all kinds of abandoned fields there. I guess when they came through, the original settlers, whatever, they cut down all the trees, made all kinds of clear cut and fields and things. And then once the trees were gone, they abandoned the places, and there's a lot of spaces like that. And the fields were wonderful, not at first, but I learned over time this surrender part that I didn't know anything about meditation. I was very young, but that was my initiation into this lifestyle, really. Because I remember very succinctly giving up at some point, being in the field, just nothing to do, and endless span of time for a child, a couple of months, just endless. What am I, just in despair, really. And just with nothing to do, something caught my eye, something in the field, a tree branch, a bird flying, something. And I would just go over there and examine it, just out of, I don't know, like in a sarcastic way. Okay, what's going on over there? I'm going to go over there, right? Just no wisdom to it at all. And then eventually you just surrender to it. And it is beautiful. It's a beautiful experience. There's so much there. And the thing about it is, in the wild setting like that, there's no human layer to it. It's only there for a reason. Everything that's there is there's the sun shining this way, the wind, whatever. There's wisdom to everything that's there, and the way it all interacts. And there's so much to examine, and it's so fulfilling just to witness and just to be in a space like that. So that was my first real experience of meditation. And learning that would, to me, is surrender. I noticed that too when I was on the beach one day. That the same thing, we were there for a long time. I was with a group of people, no escape. I'm by myself on the beach. And eventually this sarcasm of, or this awkwardness or this discontent, you just melt. And you're in this euphoric state. It's just beautiful to be on the beach and just listen to the wind. The sound of the wind has always brought me to that space. So to me, that is meditation, is that surrender. That's when you go beyond the self. And it really changed. It was an abrupt change in my life. When later, after I'd already been practicing in the desert, I was in the desert, and I was at a very low place. Diego, you will recognize the dark night of the soul kind of situation, really in a very, very difficult place in my life. And we were cleaning up. Actually, there was a fire out there. And they wanted to do a kyolche just because we had a space, a monastery. It was the right time. There's a bunch of monks around, and that's what they do. They said, well, let's do a kyolche. And I would just happen to be there because I had some connection to that place. So I joined them, but I didn't really have any desire to do a kyolche. And I was sitting on the floor. The same thing happened. I had to surrender. I had to surrender to that situation. And if you do a retreat, even a one-day retreat, at some point in that day, you're going to have to surrender. You're going to have to let go, or you'll go crazy. You just have to surrender to it. And at that point, I had so much momentum in my life. I was sitting there, and that surrender was the big one. That's when I finally let go. And it just became so bright. The experience was just life-changing. And from that point on, I went very, very strongly into practice. So this breaking through the wall of self is really the thing. It's always the thing. Very hard to do. I know everyone has a different approach and different life, and maybe you don't want to be a monastic, you don't want to go so far, but that'll save you some time, Anytime you have this awkwardness or some, constraint, or you feel like you can't move, then you can surrender. You can always surrender. And the inner world is infinite. As much as you can handle, as far as you want to go. So this happened to me again in Korea. This one I've never talked about before. After that experience, I eventually went to Korea and was training to be a monk, because I just wanted to put that in the center of my life. And I was training in the Choge order. So I was as Dago said, I was at Baek Sa, which is almost North Korea. It's very far in the mountains, really beautiful place. And I was training with a nun that I fell in love with. And that was in Seoul before we went out there. I just fell in love with her. We were together all the time, and she's a wonderful person. So I had to put that down. I had to just let go of that, because my path was different, and I didn't. And almost every monastic that leaves is because they fall in love with somebody. So we all know that's very dangerous, right? You have to be very careful about that. And when you bond with somebody, I found that, and I was really looking at that closely. It is strong. You can't just take it apart. You have to kind of weather through it. So I wrote this, I have a little piece that I wrote there when I was in deep despair, but this was a part where I learned to let go. And I remembered, and because I knew how to do that, because I'd been through it before, and I knew that was the way to do it. And it did work, but it was hard. So this is just like a journal that I was keeping at the time. The moon was split in two. I lived in the dark. The tides locked. I dreamed of nothing, the cold. There was a sharp line between the sky, a place no one goes. Inside the storm, there was no calm eye. I had to live the wild. I saw deeply into its dark, unearthly revolving. I had no way. There were less than silver rays, filth, the dull, heavy mist pressing, hanging so that I would not stay. but it was the same inside. I didn't rise for some time. I held to the dark cleft of the woods, recapitulating an unbroken chain of despair. Other times, the whole world so close to the skin. Sorry. The cold misery of the winter fell gracefully, softly. The despair was so eloquent that it rose to meet the one. I didn't know that it could. But the breakthroughs I'd had, it had always been there. Not only the state itself, but all the way back through the past, a threading through the moments of despair, through all of them. All contained an element of the eternal that now on the surge completed the circuit. Each rose to the height I could manifest at the time, with the weight of my longing, my spiritual darkness holding me to the street, the dark forest, the flash of light through the window, a Sisyphean mechanism that created its own dark current, which appeared at all points to lead to my doom. I didn't find a way through the despair. I surrendered to it. Long after the deep state was known and known. From that deep inner knowing, I could return through despair as well as from any other emotion. Going through the dark revealed all recurring pools of darkness, extending back to the initial break from my childhood. Writing really shows you a lot. But I don't know if that's clear because it's kind of prosy, but when I was having that very deep despair, that moment, it became just an energy and a vibration and bliss, peace. It just finished, and I was fine. But I had to be at that point where I could let go. And that letting go was the whole thing. When I let go, I was fine. And that I realized that all of my life, when I've had these moments of despair, I was holding on to them, and I couldn't let go. And so it becomes, like a vicious cycle, or, it becomes degraded, and you're just creating more and more suffering. If you can let go, well, I guess that's really the Buddhist teaching, this non-attachment. But if you can let go, then automatically you're in that space, that wonderful space. So that's my Dharma talk for today. So please come and join us during the Kyolche and just surrender to the beauty and majesty of the wonderful practice world. And you will have a beautiful life. I promise you that. It's there. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to, trudge through some desperate situation. You can just let go and have a beautiful life. It's that easy. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful Dharma talk. Does somebody have some question?
Oh, I forgot.
I'll go ahead. Go ahead. I think you could go.
So, Wonil Sunim was talking a lot about surrender, and I understand through my own experience about surrender. But when I first heard the term to surrender, it had a negative connotation to it because surrender means I'm giving up, here's a white flag, I'm not fighting anymore. And that's not what it means to me, but I'd like you to maybe explain a little bit through our practice what surrendering means.
Well, for me is that you have all these words and they have all these connotations and you give it a spin. And so this has a different spin, and that spin is that it's your ego or your small self that's fighting, and that's what it gives up. Is what I see from there. But what I'm hear from what Wonil Sunim is saying is that everybody has a wall in which they have to overcome when they're practicing. Everyone. So if you didn't, everybody would be practicing. But folks know that a lot of people come here and they practice and then they leave. And they leave because they hit this wall. And this wall is and you don't always hit just one wall. You hit a wall and you got to hit another one, but eventually you come to some kind of a peace with that. And for me, one of the largest walls that I hit, and this kind of thing, and you can call it giving up, or you can call it something else. You can call it insight or what have you. There are all kinds of names for it. None of the names are only a description of what happens, but it's never actually what happens. That description never really matches what happens exactly. So that's a point. And so, and we realize that if we go on Facebook and start arguing with the people about Buddhism, because everybody's saying, a lot of times people are saying the same thing, and they're just arguing about the same thing, and they're using different words, and I find it amusing, because then, I'll go and I'll get a bunch of different words, and I get a bunch of different words, and you just kind of go, and the idea is just to have people interested in talking, and they're saying, who said that? Oh, that person from Providence Zen Center. I'm going to look that place up, and kind of like that. So we kind of started doing a lot of media stuff, and that's kind of working. It is. It does work. More people are coming in, and I'm seeing different people. So, yeah, that's a good way to do this. And I noticed that many years ago, I started at Seung Sahn. I bought a camera in Singapore, and I went to Seung Sahn, back to Seung Sahn, visiting there. I came back, and Bong Sunim saw the camera and said, "You got to do something with that camera." And so from 2008, I've been posting and doing various postings, and then I've been wherever I go, I've been doing that. And so then 2020 came. I did a 100-day retreat, and when I come back, I was kind of burnt out, and I just dropped it. And so I started up again, but I noticed that there are a lot of real experts out there, and a lot of other Zen centers that have really upped their game. And so now it isn't just like me that can do that, but we have a group that does it, and this group, they have different talents with the computer. Some have posting talents, other people have putting the memes together, another person has editing the videos, and it's kind of like all kind of converging on that. And it's, it's working, it's coming up, it's bringing up the Zen Center, so that's a good thing. And so I had this kind of interesting, interesting story, and it from way back. It's about the old family that was enlightened, the Layman Pang family. And the Layman Pang family, the husband and wife and son and daughter were all enlightened. And so one day a man came up to the father, Layman Pang himself, and asked him, "Is Buddhism easy or is it difficult?" And he said that it's very difficult. It's like trying to hit the moon with the stick. And he said, well, the person then began thinking, he said, well, if it's so difficult, how is it that his wife got enlightenment? So he goes and asks his wife, how is Zen, getting enlightenment easy or is it difficult? And she said, it's as easy as touching your nose when you wash your face. And so that got him kind of confused. And so then he goes to the son, and he asks the son, he says, what's going on? How is it that enlightenment? Is it easy or is it hard? And he said that it's actually neither difficult nor easy. It's like all it's like the meaning of enlightenment is on 100 blades, on the tips of 100 blades of grass. And so still the guy is really confused, and so he goes to the daughter. And the daughter actually is quite clever, and she often beats her father in various Zen games. And so he asked the daughter, he says, I'm confused. I asked your father and mother and brother, and they all gave different answers. So is Zen difficult or easy? And she says, if you want difficult, you get difficult. If you want easy, you'll get easy. Or it might be if you make difficult, you get difficult. If you make easy, you'll get easy. And but if you don't think, Zen is the truth is just like this. And so then the man is still confused, and she said, "Where's your mind right now?" And then she smacked him. And and when he did that, he understood. So that's a but so that's the kind of it's kind of, so I know you guys are laughing, but I'm telling you this. I keep on visiting this thing here, this thing where you have the three Zen masters. Zen Master Guji would, when somebody asked him a question, he would raise his finger like that. When you ask Zen Master Linchi, you asked him a question, ha! Like and when you asked Dong San a question, he would hit you with a stick, boom, like that. And so that anytime anybody asked him questions, that's the kind of like about the Dharma. That's the result that they gave. But you got to understand also that these three men, they were total intellectuals at one time. They knew all the 84,000 volumes of the Buddhist canon that they have in Haeng Sunim. And so, but look at how they answer. Why do you think that is? Huh? It's I was waiting for that. Yeah. So that's it. That's kind of like that's it. And that's the point of that. But I want to kind of slide into something else, which is during that, so I gave that talk about how this is. But yesterday I went to MCI Shirley, and we did a one-day retreat with the inmates there. And that was arranged by Mark O'Leary, who does this. He goes there, like, I believe every week to a couple of different prisons in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. And I tell you, those guys, they had, and so I sat there with them and did interviews. They have good questions. I had one guy sit there, and he just he asked me at least 5 questions, and one right after, he had them in his memory, and one right after another about Zen. It was I don't get questions like that from you guys. It was very clear, and he wanted to know, and then somebody else came in, and they argued with me about, so I'm telling them that that when I do this, right, you have to hear that before your thinking mind can appear. You have to hear that. There's no way you can't hear that before your thinking mind appears, right? So you hear that, and then you say, "Hey, what are you doing that for?" Yeah. And so he sat there and argued with me about. He said that it comes simultaneously. And they give me good arguments. So I said, when a car is coming down the street, right? You don't see it. The horn beeps, and you step out of the way. There's no thinking there. And he said, "Yeah, you're right." So then I said, "Then what is it that hears that beep? What is it that hears that beep? It's not your thinking. It's not your conceptual mind. What hears that?" And that's what we're here to explore. Yes?
Can deaf people do Zen then?
If you was close to me, I would hit you. So yeah, and that's a whole kind of like another situation about the senses, and also about physical, like not being able to walk or being, for instance, in my case, pretty old. We used to do 1,000 Samcheon Bay in Korea, 3,000 bows. We bow all night. I can't do that physically. I can't do that. So there are times when times when you cannot practice, okay? And so then I wouldn't say that you cannot practice. And practice is very difficult. Like for instance, if you're blind, or if you can't hear, or you're in a wheelchair or stuff like that, then what is that about? But I still say that almost if you can get so that still has to do with like the senses. So the way that I relate to that is a story that Zen Master, Judy Reutman would say. I forget, what's his Zen Master name? Do you know Judy Reutman? Yeah. Bonhei, Zen Master Bonhei, yeah. So what she talked about, she said that if you, that when we're in a Dharma room, right, and we're all sitting, and if a frog was hopped into the Dharma room and we're all sitting very still, there would be nobody, according to the frog, there would be nobody in the Dharma room. As soon as somebody moved, then he would see that. Then that's how his senses read. So what we do is we have this human body, and this human body has eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and it senses our environment. But these senses, they're not the only senses around. You'll find many animals that have many different types of senses, okay? But the senses are not it. The senses are not it. Okay, that's an important point.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Well, just a short story, Carol, about the surrender thing, from a different perspective. It's like if you have an inn, right? You're running an inn, and the special guest is going to come. But the guest won't come until everything is perfect. That means completely clean. And you really want this guest to come. That's the point. That means no eye, just completely clean. That's the condition.
Go ahead.
Hello. If enlightenment is inward, the community part, how does that play a part with your awakening?
But where is inward? And where is self? And where is spirit? And what is this? And what is all? And what is all?
Everyone.
Okay, and what is everyone? At some point, you're going to get to this point where you don't know. What is what?
Everyone becomes self again, as far as I believe.
All right. So then I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get you off the kind of the thinking mode so we can go through this and it would be easy for me to actually keep on questioning each thing that you said to the point where you couldn't question. That's the point where you don't question and you get to this mind that's before your questioning, before your words. And from there, then you begin to attain the point. And this word enlightenment is really loaded. So I, for one, don't like to use it so much, okay? It's because it's really a loaded word. And it has so many different meanings. You know, the Buddha, when he got enlightenment, he was hanging around because, you know, you got enlightenment, he's going to enjoy it for a while. So for a couple of weeks, he was hanging around where he had gotten enlightenment. And while he was walking down a way there, a farmer saw him and he could see how he was walking. He went up to him and said, are you a god? And the Buddha said, no. He said, are you a deva? That's kind of like an angel. And he said, no. And he said, then what are you? And he said, I'm aware. Okay, so this is somebody who's enlightened. That's how he's speaking. And then you get all these other kind of twisted things, not twisted things, but misleading kinds of words and names and stuff for enlightenment. So you got to watch out. And you got to practice. And one of the ways of practicing, so what is Zen? Zen is about your experience, not about the words that you find in a book or the words that you find on the internet and so forth and so on. What those words do is it simply kind of gets you asking a question so then that you can so then that you can practice for yourself and have that experience for yourself. But if you don't have that experience, then it's not true.
I appreciate it, but then you assume that I was just using cognitively and not my experience. So you assume that by just hearing my answer. But if you believe it,
No, what I heard,
it's something you learn differently if you want to practice. Like Buddha said, don't just take what I say as what I say. You have to.
but every single word that you've used, every single word that you use has many meanings. It has many meanings. So I'm trying to bring you to that point where you get before those words so that you can really attain what that point is. So yeah, of course, I can assume many things from the words that you use, just like when you say enlightenment, you can assume many things. And so, but those words, the words that you're using and what you're saying, isn't it. That's not it. No, but even, your emotions are not it either. I don't know if you know that, but your emotions are not it either. Then I ask you, what is it? Okay, well, then you come here and practice and attain that point. You come here and practice and attain that point. Because there's an answer to that. What I just asked you is the answer to that. But you've got to attain that by your experience. Go ahead.
Can you explain the connection between Zen and energy?
You have interesting questions, too. I mean, that's it. That's my explanation is right there, between Zen and energy. But you want words about it?
I have no words.
Yeah, I don't know. But you know, there's a book, and it's called, a long time ago, I read, it's called The Tao of Physics. Did you read that? Have you read that? Yeah, you might find the answer in there. Yeah.
Oh, Tawi said for energy, he said, you have to conserve energy. Like, not let it out all the time. It's not like putting money in the bank. If you conserve your energy, then you gain energy. So it's just, it's being aware, like we always say, being in the moment, not having 5,000 things going on all the time. And your energy just going out. You can see that easily in people, if they're centered and calm, then they have plenty of energy.
And do you just mind if I move on to something else kind of quick? Is that okay? Did that answer your question as best we could? No. So then, all right. Then, so, and I'm sure that there's some real technical stuff that could be said about energy, but I was wanting to get a little bit back to what Wonil Sunim was saying, and he was talking about the self. And also yesterday when I was talking to these guys, they were also asking questions about the ego and about self and stuff like that. And then they said, and how, and one of them was, did this Egyptian practice, which is spelled, I think, K-E-M-P. Anyways, it's that kind of a practice that's really old. It comes from Egypt and Middle East in his style, and so it's different than a lot of the other stuff that comes around in that it doesn't have like you have the Bible or you have the Quran, and it's kind of a little bit like Buddhism. There's no Bible in Buddhism. There's no one book in Buddhism. And I wouldn't want there to be one book in Buddhism, one thing. Anyways, he was talking about the ego, and other folks came in and talked about the ego, and they seem to keep on trying to highlight it. But the way that you deal with the ego is not by highlighting it, it's by just doing it. And that's an interesting kind of thing, because, of course, I like to, when I'm talking, to use that phrase, because it's from this. It's not from the Nike commercial, Just Do It, because that's Just Do It was way before the people, before Nike got hold of it. The spiritual masters were talking about it way back when. And so then, what is Just Do It? So if you just do something, you step out in front of the street, you notice a car coming out the corner of your eyes, and you step back. There's no ego or nothing there. And so there's two boxers fighting. They're going at it toe to toe. They're just boxing. They have a lot of ego. We all know that. But at that time, it's just boxing. And so there's this Yuna Kim, I believe, in 2010. She was in ice skating. She did this very complicated ice skating form and won the gold medal when she did that. When she come off the ice, tears came down her face. But when she was on that ice, she was just skating. Only her inside and her outside became one. And so the meaning of that, what is the meaning of that? Is that she had no idea of I. She wasn't at the time thinking, oh, I'm going to win this. You can't do that. You fall on your butt. Okay, so the inside and outside. So a way to deal with the ego is not by emphasizing about looking at it, because what you do is you just let it grow. It's just like with your anger. If you dwell on your anger, it's only going to grow. Then what do? You don't hold on to it and you don't push it away. You just do what's there in the moment. And so that was one of the kinds of ways that I was talking with the folks there yesterday. And they were quite a diverse group of people, quite a diverse group. So in one sense, they're really unlucky. In another sense, they have this thing where they're in this prison, in this situation, where they're kind of like in this suffering situation. It's a very kind of a situation where it's easy as to what is it all about? What am I? Why am I? Why is my situation like this? And it isn't as simple as just breaking the law. But how is it that I was brought up in this situation? Anyway, I thought I'd point that out. Somebody has some other question? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, please. It's on. Wow, sorry, we should use the microphone. Yeah.
Very insightful talk. If you can actually elaborate on the sort of relationship between the wall, fear, and letting go. I think we all sort of struggle. They're sort of related, but yet we don't necessarily know how to deal with that. Just enlighten us.
You talking about me?
Yes. Maybe both.
Okay, for me, it's like we're in a silo of some kind. What we see as reality is what we constructed our whole lives. Through deep association, like and dislike, you create your persona, and that's what you live inside. But, so that's the wall is like, that's the limit of your, think about it if you were just given sight and you never saw before. You wouldn't know what you were looking at. People that were blind, and are given sight say they only see blocks of color. They don't know what the world is. So beyond your reality, there's so much, and you don't know how to process that. So, and like you said, fear, for whatever reason, you only stay within your reality. So then you're always dealing with I, my, me, and you, and this whole the problems of humanity come from that, But to go beyond that is impossible, and you can't perceive what it is. You can't see the wall. You don't know where the door is. You don't believe there's a way out, or there's more. And deep inside, you don't believe it. You almost have to have a fracture. Like Leonard Cohen says, the light comes through the cracks, That like this dark night of the soul is like a magic tool, or these people in prison, Or for Seung Sahn, the Korean War, Mahago Sananda's family was murdered by the Khmer Rouge, right? Some kind of, it has to be almost broken but, if you have a deep question, we try with Kongans, with the Swadu practice, we try to go deep inside and, try to liberate ourselves from that.
Maybe what I could do is just tell you about when I hit a wall, and that was I was in Shinwon Sa, and before I went to Shinwon Sa, I was at Wage Sa, and so they said, oh, you can go to Shinwon Sa and sit there. And then Shinwon Sa was a place up in the mountains. It's really quiet, and you could just, and you didn't have to do a lot of work. When I was in Wage Sa, and in Korea, this is 2 temples in Korea, in Wage Sa, I was always busy. But go up to there, into this temple, and also I had PTSD, which is a post-traumatic stress syndrome, and so in Wage Sa there was a lot of noise, and so the sitting was difficult for me. So then they said, oh, you're going to go and sit up there with a couple other monks, or well-known monks. So I went there and I sat there. Before I went there, I said, oh, I know how to sit. I know all the technique. I'm going to go up there. Things are going to be perfect. Yes, sir. And so I went up there and I started sitting. and it's really quiet, there's nobody around, and my mind go poof and start wandering. And I couldn't hold my mind together. It just wouldn't stop. And it went on like that for 90 days. It was really an amazing thing to have happen. And then after that, sometime later, I had a Dharma talk, and I was talking to this monk who was giving a talk, and he basically talked about how people will practice Buddhism for about 5 years until they hit that wall, and a lot of people will just drop out. But with me, I just decided to continue to practice and and I don't have an issue with it. That was some years ago, and slowly, it kind of worked itself out. And sometimes that's what happens. Things will just kind of work themselves out. I feel if you have the correct technique and you're doing the correct practicing, they'll just work itself out. So you can have all these questions and stuff, but as you practice, then these things will just naturally work itself out. Okay. Why are you standing there? But we have, yeah. So I think that's the end of the Dharma talk. Thank you.
So thank you all. Just a couple of announcements while we go ahead and wind down. As always, thank you all for coming and appearing here today. First of all, we have a Dharma school in which we are starting. And so this is going to be starting on May 5th, and it's for children ages 5 through 12 every first and third Sunday from 9:30 to 11:30 in our upstairs Dharma room. So we'll be starting a children's program. If any of you have kids, to come bring them here, and there's going to be fun, learning meditation and mindful movement while engaging in activities-based curriculum. And Lisa is one of the leaders of this. If you want to raise your hand, Lisa, so you have some questions about it, you can ask her. Another event that we have going on is every Sunday morning before our practice, Lisa runs a yoga group in the upstairs Dharma room by donation. And so if you have any interest in doing yoga, please also connect with Lisa and come join us for that. Another option we have is you can come do a guest stay with us. Wonil Sunim invited you all to come live here at the temple, and if you can't sell your house overnight, maybe come spend a weekend with us. And so you can contact our director online through providencezen.org, and you can look at spending a day, a night, or however long you'd like to come experience temple life and kind of be part of the regular community here. It's an absolutely wonderful experience. We do have monthly retreats, and so please keep an eye on our online schedule for the next ones that'll be coming out. If you would like to help support us, there's a couple ways you can do so. One, we always can use volunteers to help us maintain the temple. There's a sign-up sheet near the entrance, and in doing so, you can volunteer your time, energy, and efforts in whatever capacity is best for you to help support the temple. Of course, we also rely on you, the Sangha, for financial contributions to keep this place running. As I always say, about 20 to 30% of our income these days, a little bit more actually, comes from direct donations from you, the Sangha. And so in doing that, you are able to help keep these doors open where we can offer this practice and teaching free of charge to everyone who comes through these doors, and also be able to maintain this space for everyone. Thanks to your very generous donations, we are redoing and fixing a lot of the roof at about $22,000. So a big thank to you, all of you, for that big accomplishment that we've done in this past half year or so. Last and not least, if you enjoyed the Dharma Talks today, we also have an online kind of podcast show that we run here through the Providence Zen Center called Pointing at the Moon, and both Wonil Sunim and Kwan Haeng Sunim have been on it. And so if you would like to learn a little bit more about them, here's some more Dharma from them and many of our other teachers. They're about half an hour long conversations, and you can find them online at our YouTube page. So thank you all so much again for coming, and we'll see you next Sunday. The gift store is open, as usual. Thank you all. Is the gift store being held?
They will get the projector off. Didn't want to unplug anything though. I don't want to mess anything up.
I know that, I did that last week, well, not last week, not long ago, and